Hello there guys, and welcome back to How to Feed the Beast in Minecraft. Today I'm going to be covering a subject that a lot of you have been asking me to cover over the last few weeks, and we are going to be taking a look at the steam boilers from the Railcraft mod. The steam boiler is a multi-block machine. It can be used to combine either solid or liquid fuel with water and turn it into steam. That steam can then be sent to steam engines to produce Buildcraft power, or the steam can be sent to a steam turbine to produce industrial craft power. You're going to need two of a selection of 4 different blocks in order to build your boiler. The types of blocks you're going to use really depend on your setup and are situational. First of all, here you have the low pressure boiler, which is the standard building block for the boiler itself. You also have the option of the high pressure boiler, which produces twice the amount of steam but consumes twice the amount of fuel. It is a more compact way of building a boiler. Each boiler requires a firebox to be able to input fuel. You can either use a solid fuel firebox, which will take fuels such as coal, charcoal, or one of the better fuels, coal coke, or there's a liquid fuel firebox, which will use standard fuel, biofuel, or even creosote oil. Now, boilers are extremely simple to build and use, so let's head on over to the workshop and I can put one together for you. Okay, now just before we dive into the assembly, you need to start thinking about the type of fuel box you want and the size of the boiler. Now, as I said, it's a multi-block machine and it is available in a number of different sizes. Every boiler starts with at least one firebox on the bottom row. Now, the firebox on its own does nothing. If I right click on it, I get no interface and I cannot interact with it. So if we place down a single firebox, the only thing we can do with that is place a single boiler on the top. Now, the boiler can be high or low pressure, and if I right click on here, whether I right click on the firebox or right click on the boiler, I get the interface as it is a multi-block machine. You could also use a 2x2 configuration of fireboxes. Now, if you're using 2x2, the boiler can either be 8 cubic meters, so that's 8 blocks, or it can be 12 cubic meters, 12 blocks. The largest you can build is using a 3x3 configuration of fireboxes, and with a 3x3 configuration you can either have 18 blocks or 36 blocks, giving you an 18 cubic meter or a 36 cubic meter boiler. And again, you have the option of either low or high pressure. So first of all, you need to choose whether you want to burn solid fuel or liquid fuel. It isn't really going to make much difference in terms of output, it's just what type of fuel you have to hand. If we look at the interface for a solid fuel boiler, you can see we have a storage capacity for water on the right hand side. Now, each cubic meter of boiler will allow us to store 4 buckets of water internally, and we can use water buckets to fill the boiler, or we could pump water directly in via pipes. We have our solid fuel burning area here, and we also have 3 more slots, so we can actually put 4 stacks of solid fuel in at any one time. This is our temperature gauge to tell us how hot the boiler is operating. Steam starts to get produced at 100 degrees. A low pressure boiler has a maximum of 500 degrees and a high pressure boiler has a maximum of 1000 degrees, and the gauge on the left shows us how much steam we have. Again, a larger boiler will allow us to provide more steam. If we have a quick look at the liquid firebox, exactly the same screen, except instead of having 4 slots for stacks of solid fuel, we have an internal storage tank for liquid fuel. And to put liquid fuel in, it needs to be pumped in via pipes or liquid ducts to the fireboxes on the bottom row. Now, the smallest steam boiler, which is 1 cubic meter, can provide 10 steam per tick, and that is enough to power a single hobbyist's engine, which will output 2 MJ per tick. Now, that's actually more efficient than putting solid fuel directly into the hobbyist steam engine, which will only give you 1.6 MJ per tick. If you want to be able to power a steam turbine, you are either going to need a 36 cubic meter low pressure boiler or an 18 cubic meter high pressure boiler. So without wanting to get you too bogged down with numbers and mathematics, the easiest thing to remember is that a low pressure boiler gives you 10 steam per tick per cubic meter, and a high pressure boiler will give you 20 steam per tick per cubic meter. So a high pressure boiler outputs twice the amount of steam per cubic meter, but also uses twice the amount of fuel and takes longer to heat up. This means that high pressure boilers are good for space saving, but they're not the most efficient. So if you have space and you have the iron required, I would always go with low pressure boilers where you can. So let's have a look in the workshop and I can show you how easy they are to put together. Okay, so here we are at the crafting table and they are very, very simple to build. So let's start off with the low and high pressure boiler boxes themselves. To make a low pressure boiler, you simply need 2 iron plates, which are made from iron ingots placed in a plate bending machine. Top and bottom will give us a low pressure boiler. It's that easy. Now, to make a high pressure boiler, it's exactly the same, except we use steel ingots to make steel plates instead of iron. So one above the other will give you a high pressure boiler block. So if you're struggling for iron, you may want to go for the high pressure boilers. They do save space, but they are not as efficient as using a low pressure boiler. So the next thing you're going to need is to make your firebox. And there are 2 different types of firebox, the solid fuel and the liquid fuel. Now, in order to make a firebox, one of the first things you're going to need is a fire charge. And in order to make a fire charge, you're going to need blaze powder, which means you're going to have to go to the nether, find some blazes and get some blaze rods. Now, if you place a blaze rod in a crafting grid, you will get 2 blaze powder. If you put it in a pulverizer, you will get 4, and if you put it in a macerator, you will get 5. So macerating blaze rods is the best way to get the most blaze powder. You need a single blaze powder, a single gunpowder, and a single coal in a crafting grid, and each one will give you 3 fire charges. So it's not terribly expensive to make. And then in order to make a solid fuel firebox, you need a furnace at the bottom, a fire charge in the middle, and then bricks, which are exactly the same as we used to make the coal coke oven, placed in the remaining slots, and that will give you a solid fueled firebox. Making the liquid fueled firebox is just as easy. Again, a furnace at the bottom with a fire charge in the middle, but the recipe is a little bit more complicated. You need an empty bucket at the top, iron bars either side on the left and right, and 4 more steel plates in the 4 corners, and that will give you a liquid fueled firebox. So let's head on outside and we can put together our steam boiler. Now, you can't mix and match boiler parts either, so the boiler has to be made completely of low pressure boilers or completely of high pressure boilers, and it has to have completely solid fuel fireboxes or completely liquid fuel fireboxes. You can't mix and match. So I've decided I'm going to build my steam boiler here. Plenty of room. It's a very useful place to build it because I am next to my coal coke oven, so I have a source of solid fuel, and I'm also next to the tank that is filling with creosote oil, so I could use liquid fuel. Well, I don't have much creosote oil at the moment, so I'm going to go for a solid fuel boiler. Now, one thing that you need to remember, of course, is you do need to have water in the boiler at all times. A boiler full of water with no heat is a harmless tank of water. A boiler with heat and no water is an explosion waiting to happen. So always make sure you have water in the boiler before you add any kind of fuel. Now, the best way to get water into a boiler is with an aqueous accumulator, which we have built before. Of course, you could use something like a Buildcraft pump and pump into a tank, or pump directly into the firebox itself. But I find the best way of doing it is like this, having a pond of water with an aqueous accumulator in the middle and building the fireboxes on top. This means I don't need any power and I don't need any pipes. So, solid fuel fireboxes. Obviously I don't want to put them in the water, so I'm going to have to build them by starting on top of the aqueous accumulator. Obviously if I right click the aqueous accumulator, I will get the interface. So crouch and right click puts down our first block. So I'm going to click on the sides of those so I don't accidentally put anything in the water. And I've got 9 of these blocks, so that will give me my first layer there, which is my solid fuel fire boxes. Next comes the low pressure boiler, which are these blocks. Now I'm going to need 36. I'm building the biggest boiler I can. Now you can see as I put these blocks together, they're not actually touching. There's a gap between them. So this is how you know that it isn't forming a multi-block machine at this point. As soon as the last block goes in, like so, the gaps fill in, it becomes solid. Now this is only 2 blocks high, so it is an 18 block boiler. If I try and right click and put the next block down, I will get the interface. So what I need to do is shift or crouch and right click. That will put the next block down, and as you can see, it has now broken the multi-block machine and there are gaps, but I can continue now to go through and place the rest of the blocks. No longer needing to crouch. And now we have put together our 27 block boiler, and we want to go 1 row higher because we want to go for the 36. Let's jump up there. There we are. That is our 36 block boiler. Let's jump down and break a leg. So if I right click, you can see we are starting to fill with water. Now a single aqueous accumulator should provide you with enough water to completely run a 36 block steam boiler, but I'm going to leave it until it is full with water before I put any fuel in there. So while it's filling up, what you need to remember is the bottom row of blocks, the fire boxes, are the input. So if you wish to input water and wish to input fuel, you can pipe them in through the bottom layer. All of the upper blocks, the boiler itself, are outputs. So to output steam, you connect your liquid pipes or liquid ducts to the top part of the boiler. Now there are various different pipes and methods you can use to get steam from the boiler to the various engines and turbines. If you use cobblestone or iron waterproof pipes, it will carry 1 bucket of steam per tick, which is enough for any single low pressure boiler to output. If you use a golden waterproof pipe, it will carry 4 buckets of steam per tick. If you connect a steam engine directly to the side of the boiler, it will output 8 buckets of steam per tick, but it will only output if the boiler is 50% full or more on steam. If you connect a liquiduct to the boiler, a liquiduct without power will also carry 8 buckets of steam per tick if it's unpowered, but again only when the boiler is 50% or more full with steam. If you power the liquiduct, it will actually carry 16 buckets of steam per tick, and it will carry steam as long as there is some in the boiler. If you wish to connect your boiler to a steam turbine, you're actually going to need 2 powered liquiducts because you need 32 buckets of steam per tick to work the turbine. So let's have a look and see if we are full of water. Well, we nearly are. It's still filling up, but at least now we can start to put in our coal coke. So I can drop it straight in here, or I can drop it in one of these and it'll automatically move it over. So the good thing is you don't need to constantly put more fuel in. As you can see, it's starting to burn fuel. We have our temperature gauge here on the left hand side. Now a larger boiler takes longer to heat up than a smaller boiler. We're not producing steam yet, but it will get there once it starts to get up to 100 degrees. So we'll give that a few minutes and let it get up to temperature. While it's doing that, I have a little setup here that I'm just going to use to demonstrate that the engine is working. So all we have is a chest full of stone blocks with a wooden pipe and a stone transport pipe, just so we've got something we can attach the engine to. Lever's already in place. Now the engine I'm going to use is a hobbyist steam engine. Relatively simple to build, but not exactly cheap, as they require a piston and some glass, gold nuggets and some gold plated gears. But I'm going to put that down here next to the pipe. And I'm going to connect it up with liquiducts, because if you can use liquiducts, you might as well. They're the best thing to use. We're still heating up, we are only at 31 degrees C, so it's going to take a little while longer just to get the heat in there we need. Once it's up to temperature, the best thing you can do is keep feeding it fuel, because you don't want it to drop below 100 degrees or you will stop producing steam. I guess this also proves a very good point. If you are wanting to use just a single or a small number of steam engines, then you might be better off building a smaller boiler, because the smaller boiler will actually heat up more quickly. However, I do intend to use this to power a steam turbine, which I'll be building in the next episode, so I'm building it this size now so that I don't have to reconfigure it later. Okay, so we're at 98 degrees C, we are still burning through fuel quite quickly, and the boiler will continue to burn through fuel quickly until it gets to its maximum temperature, which is 500 degrees in the case of the low pressure boiler and 1000 degrees in the case of the high pressure boiler, and that's to give you a bit of a buffer so that if it runs out of fuel, at least you're not going to lose all of your heat straight away and you can continue to produce steam. Once the boiler reaches its maximum temperature, it will stop burning fuel so quickly and only burn fuel just to maintain the temperature. So as you can see, now we've hit the upper side of 100 degrees, we are producing steam, and the production of steam is actually quite quick once the boiler gets up to speed. So it's now actually night time, it's taken so long for it to get up to speed, but as you can see with our liquid duct, it actually has steam in it already. Now that's because the boiler is over 50% full. Now if I'd have put the redstone torch down next to it, it would have started drawing steam before it was 50% full. So this is only drawing at 8 buckets of steam per tick, which is absolutely fine for this engine. So let us throw the switch and the engine starts to pump. And as you can see, we are moving blocks around. It's actually quite quick. Now, one thing that is worth remembering with the steam boiler, if you saw my last video when I made the energy bridge, you can actually pump steam directly into the energy bridge via a steam consumer and convert it directly into any other form of energy. But in the next video I will be building the steam turbine, which is a legitimate method of converting steam power into industrial craft power without the use of an energy bridge, and I'll also be showing you a neat little trick you can do with steam to transport power without loss. So guys, there you go, the steam boiler. So guys, there you go, the Railcraft steam boiler. There are still one or two items that I want to cover, such as the steam turbine, which you're going to see in the next episode, and after that I will be looking at switching over to one of the newer mod packs for Feed the Beast, as I'm currently using Feed the Beast Ultimate and that is now outdated. It won't be getting any further updates due to some incompatibilities with Red Power, and I'm in the position now of trying to decide whether I want to try and export my old world and workshop over to a new server and try and get it all working, because we do have a lot of nice machines and bits and pieces that we've built that will still be relevant to the new mod packs that I don't fancy having to start from scratch and build again, or the possibility that I may have to start from scratch and change the format of the show slightly. Maybe I can stream the building of a new workshop, but we will have to see how we are going to do it. So, as always guys, I hope you found this video both informative and entertaining. If you have, please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it's you guys that really help the channel to grow. Remember, you can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and the links are below in the description. And as always, please keep the comments and messages coming with suggestions for items and objects for future shows. I'll keep adding them to the list. Bear in mind, as we are switching to a new mod pack, I'm going to have to go through and see which of those things are still relevant. So, until next time, I've been UnstableVoltage, this has been How to Feed the Beast in Minecraft, and I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye for now.